Hey, you're listening to the Riverdale podcast. This is episode number 91. My name is Jonathan. Welcome to lovely Riverdale, USA. This is an Archie Comics fan podcast. We update every Saturday morning, and every week we break things down into 4 categories. The first category is the book of the week. That's the comic book I read this week. Sometimes it's a new comic book. Sometimes it's an old comic book, but it's always an Archie comic book. We move then to news. That's what happened in the week that was in the world of Archie Comics. Then on to new releases. That's what came out this past Wednesday. What will be coming up this coming Wednesday from Archie. We're going to wrap things up today with listener email. I'm a little under the weather this week. I'm going to try to keep the coughing to a minimum as we get into the show and jump right into the book of the week. This week's book of the week is Betty and Veronica Double Digest number 218. This is another great Christmas-themed double digest. Really cranking these out. I believe we got another one coming up next week as well. I personally can't get enough. I hope that you're excited about these as well. But we start off with a great Jeff Schultz cover of Archie dressed as Santa Claus with Betty and Veronica in his lap. Not the most appropriate cover. Certainly iconic. A lot of fun. There's a great pink color to the background that's really nice. They're sitting by the Christmas tree. You got that great teddy bear down there next to the chair. It's a teddy bear that shows up constantly in Archie Comics. We got to get to the bottom of just where that came from. I always think of Stan Goldberg when I think of that little teddy bear. But maybe it came from someplace else entirely. Who knows? We start the issue out, and we're going to talk pretty extensively about the stories, the Frank Doyle, Dan DeCarlo stories in here. There's a couple of book-length stories that really caught my eye, and I know that everybody knows how great Dan DeCarlo is. And even if you know that, there's still time and there's still reason to celebrate his work, and these stories are just such an indication. We start out the issue with The Great Crashers, Part 1. This runs 4 parts. There's sort of a parallel story in the back that's also book length and then broken up into 4 acts. So we get this full story. Later in the issue, we get another book length story that's broken up into 4 parts as well. They make nice bookends. I think we're going to highlight those specifically. So, as I said, we start out Betty and Veronica in The Great Crashers, Part 1. This is written by the great Frank Doyle, penciled, as I said, by Dan DeCarlo, inks by Jimmy DeCarlo, letters by Bill Yoshida, colors by Barry Grossman. And in this story, in classic Archie fashion, Veronica is going to be decorating the country club for Christmas, and Betty's going to be decorating the children's shelter. As I said on prior episodes, if you're going to have a Christmas time story, more often than not, you're going to have, in the world of Archie, if you're going to have a Christmas story, it's going to involve children. And those children are going to be orphans, or they're going to be homeless, or they're going to be in a children's hospital, something like that. There's always the most unfortunate children that you can muster up in a story that's appropriate for kids to read. And this is no exception. Betty and Veronica go, and they decorate the children's hospital, and then Veronica's father gets involved, and the other folks from the country club, and they decide to give the kids a great Christmas with clowns. Of course, nothing says Christmas like clowns. And what's great throughout this is the subtlety of Dan DeCarlo's art and the subtle acting that he's able to do. Of course, we know he can do a slapstick bit. We know that he can render a really simple background that's very evocative. We know that he can do big over-the-top anger and things like that. Here in the second part of the story, Love It or Lump It, second part of this same first story, we have Reggie and Jughead going head-to-head and getting into sort of fisticuffs. Dan DeCarlo was great at all that stuff, but he's just especially good at drawing the characters who aren't the focus of the scene. And he's super good at drawing these really subtle reactions. He's really good. There's a panel here after the sort of slapsticky over-the-topness of Reggie and Jughead's fight where Pop Tate pulls them apart, and they look really remorseful for what they've done. They look genuinely like upset and sad, and that's tough to do. He does these great angry faces. There's this terrific page I'm looking at right now, page 11 of this story, with page 4 of this second part, is Veronica just really giving them the riot act and really yelling at them. And Dan DeCarlo had just such a great grasp of these characters, maybe just owing to the amount of time that he spent with them, that there's like just a subtlety to the performance of these characters that I don't want to say it's lacking in other people's work. I'm saying that I want to say that it's difficult to achieve in the first place, and Dan DeCarlo was really able to spend the time with these characters to the point that he really understood them and does a really, really great job. There's a great panel where just Betty and Veronica are coming to this understanding that they've hurt Reggie and Jughead's feelings. And there's just this great panel where Betty looks kind of sullen and she's touching her face and she's standing next to Veronica, who has this wide-eyed expression of sort of newfound understanding. And the fact that I'm drawing that information, not just from the context and from the word balloons, but from the artwork itself, really speaks to Dan DeCarlo's credit. So, getting back to the story, Jughead and Reggie are very upset that they weren't a part of Betty and Veronica's plans. So they go in and become a part of that. They go in and clean up after the party has ended. And they, through some contrived circumstances, come to be better friends and learn a sort of great Christmas lesson by the end of the story. So it's cool. I like these stories. And there's another story we'll talk about in just a moment, where it comes in 4 acts. It's a full, like, 32-page, what would have been like a full 32-page comic, pushed right here at the beginning of the digest. And while it's in 4 acts and does tell a full story, it sort of shifts gears in the middle. You have your great Betty and Veronica story in the first half, and then the story shifts a little bit and becomes a story about Reggie and Jughead. And you don't see a lot of books like this anymore. I'm not sure exactly what era this is from. Certainly not new. We did lose Dan DeCarlo back in 2000, 2001, somewhere around then. I would place this somewhere around the late 80s, but I'm not entirely certain. Moving ahead, we got some great early Dan Parent artwork. I didn't even recognize this as Dan Parent artwork, but it's a lot of fun. We also got, just ripping through here, looking at all these great stories, a couple of great Sabrina Christmas stories. I never thought of Sabrina as having a lot of Christmas issues, but she did have that good long run in the 70s, and presumably every year got a Christmas issue. I do have a couple of old 70s Sabrina Christmas specials, giant-sized issues. So some good Sabrina stuff there. And as I said, heading all the way to the back of the issue, the final story in this double digest is another book-length story, another four-parter. And this one, again, is brought to us by Frank Doyle on the script, Dan DeCarlo pencils, inks by Rudy Lepic, letters by Bill Yoshida, and colors by Barry Grossman. And this is all about New Year's resolutions. And this starts off in the first page of the story with an art alteration that I'm sure is going to drive some folks nuts. Of course, this is an old story, but the year at the beginning of the story has been changed to 2014. Happy 2014. We've talked about story alterations like this in the past, and that doesn't bother me at all. I know that there are some folks that it's just drives them up the wall. Historical stuff that is switched around to appear more modern. I like it. And this is a brilliant Frank Doyle script. Again, genius, subtle Dan DeCarlo artwork. Especially specifically the facial expressions of Veronica and Betty are just so good. And Frank Doyle has written this brilliant script that is simple at its core and then sort of splinters out and becomes more complicated. The basic premise is that Betty has decided that her New Year's resolution is not to interfere in Archie and Veronica's relationship, that she's going to stand back and let Veronica have Archie. And Veronica has to know what Betty's New Year's resolution is. And Betty refuses to tell her because she doesn't feel that that's going to work out well. And it's just that great counterbalance of Betty's trying to do the right thing, and Veronica just can't let her do the right thing for her own selfish reasons. And they just go back and forth like that. And throughout, there's a discussion of New Year's resolutions and whether you should have them and why you should bother and all this stuff. The idea of choosing a New Year's resolution that's too intense or too overbearing that you're not going to be able to do it, or choosing something so small that it's not enough of a change to even bother with. At the end of the story, we have Archie and Jughead and Veronica and Betty sort of speaking to the audience and sharing lines here as they say, don't bite off more than you can chew, or promise more than you can do. A small improvement's the solution to a successful resolution. I realize as I'm reading that out loud that it all rhymes. Cool stories, a lot of fun. And there are a million other stories in this, of course. Double digest, 160-odd pages of great comics at a $3.99 price point. I can't say enough times what a great value Archie gives us month in and month out with all of these double digests. And if you're like me and you can't get enough Dan DeCarlo and you can't get enough Frank Doyle and you love Christmas stories and Archie comics, then you really can't go wrong with this week's book of the week, Betty and Veronica, Double Digest number 218. All right, in Archie news this week, over at goodereader.com, it's a conversation with Michael Murphy of Iverse and John Goldwater, co-CEO of Archie Comics. This is a discussion of the Archie Unlimited app. This is a flat fee of $9.99 a month to read a huge selection of Archie comics dating back 1 year and older. This is a cool service, and this had a sort of quiet rollout. It hit, and I wasn't sure whether it was something old that I didn't realize or something new. But it is a new feature. It has come out just in the last 3 weeks to a month, and it is available to us. $9.99 gets you over 4,000 Archie comic books. And you can get the specifics about that from the app itself or over at this article on goodereader.com. This is cool stuff, and they talk a bit about the changing digital market and things like that. It's a good interview and a good introduction to Archie Unlimited, which I think is a great service. I just spoke in the last segment about the double digest and how 160 pages for $3.99 is a great deal. This is $9.99 a month for thousands upon thousands of pages of great Archie comics. It's a great interview, interesting stuff, cool things that Archie has going on. On news that is a little less exciting, a little sadder, over at comicsbeat.com, they reported on the car accident that occurred involving Stan Goldberg and his wife Pauline Goldberg. This is something that I heard about late last week before recording last week's show, but didn't have a lot of details on until this week. And brought to us at Comics Beat, like I said, a brief article just letting us know about the extent of their injuries. They are both stable and doing well and expected to make full recoveries, but they are going to be in the hospital for some time. Comics Beat did do us the favor of giving us the address of the hospital where we can send cards, flowers, I guess whatever would be a appropriate and respectful extension of your appreciation for their work and your hopes for their speedy recovery. But you can head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. We'll have a link there. Also put out a blog post earlier this week with that information. And I think that this is a great move for us as fans to show our appreciation and to extend a bit of generosity and extend a bit of ourselves to them. This is going to be a lengthy recovery, I think, for both of them. And I think it would be a good move on our part to send a card and wish them well in their recovery. So that is the news of the week this week over at goodereader.com. We've got that talk with Michael Murphy and John Goldwater about Archie digital stuff. And over at comicsbeat.com, we got an update on Stan and Pauline Goldberg. Head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. You'll see the post for this episode, and you'll get links to all of those stories. You'll definitely want to get in there and check them out. All right, new releases for this past Wednesday, November the 27th, are as follows. Betty and Veronica Double Digest number 218. As we talked about at the top of the show, there's $3.99. Be on the lookout for the Fox number 1 second printing that was due out this past Wednesday, $2.99. Also this past Wednesday, Sonic Super Digest number 5 for $3.99. Sonic Super Special Magazine number 9 for $9.99. And Sonic Universe number 58 for $2.99. Also, this week, we got Sonic Universe Volume 6 for $11.99, collecting Sonic Universe numbers 21 through 24. Coming up this coming Wednesday, December the 4th, we are getting Archie number 650 for $3.99. Apparently, that's an oversized issue. I hadn't realized that until now. That is the first part of the World Tour storyline that Dan Parent's doing. Really, really excited about that. We will definitely be talking about that on next week's show. Archie number 650 next week for $3.99. Also next week, Archie Double Digest number 246 for $3.99. I believe that's the last of the Christmas-themed Double Digests, so grab that if you're looking for that kind of thing. Also next week, The Fox number 2 for $2.99. You're going to get a Dean Haspiel cover on there and also a Paul Pope variant. Paul Pope is one of my favorite dudes. You'll definitely want to check out that cover. Finally, next week on December the 4th, we're going to get Sonic the Hedgehog number 255. A couple different covers on that one as well. Over on the digital side of things, this week we got Archie's Christmas Spirit. This is a 100-plus page digital exclusive, all great Archie Comics Christmas stories. I'm hoping they're great. I'm assuming they're great. But that's another 100-page digital exclusive for $3.99. So those are your new releases for this past Wednesday, November the 27th, this coming Wednesday, December the 4th, and your digital exclusive this week from Archie Comics. Finally this week, I want to read an email. I got a listener email this week from Joe Crawford. Joe writes, I really enjoyed the show this week. It was cool to hear all of the books get reviewed. I had an idea that I thought could be interesting to listeners. I know that I'm interested. It is obvious from your podcast that you know a lot about comics in general, and I was wondering if there was room on the show for a small segment about what else you were reading. Sometimes something like the other books that you picked up at the comic shop or a trade you've read. Even if you only do it once a month. I love that the podcast is dedicated to Archie Comics, but always wonder what else a host is reading. Thanks so much for the great job that you do. Signed, Joe Crawford. First of all, thanks for writing, Joe. I'm really excited about the listener emails I've been getting coming in. And if you send one in, I will answer it on the show. Always excited to have listener-generated content. That's really cool and always exciting to get. To answer your question, Joe, I don't know if I would make it a set part of the show. If folks write in and are interested in that, that's certainly something I would consider. But I will answer your question as it stands right now. The things I am most excited about or have read most recently, I just read the original graphic novel, The Fifth Beatle, just being developed for a film. That had a lot of buzz around it. I honestly don't remember the creators that are involved right now. It's a couple of folks who are really new to the comic scene and did this great book about Brian Epstein, who was the Beatles' manager. And it's a really skillfully done book. It definitely wasn't my favorite. It is something I read recently that I did like a lot, and I think folks will be hearing a lot more about it in the coming months. And certainly when we get to award season with the Eisners and the Harveys and all that. In terms of monthly books, month in and month out, I always love Saga, Brian K. Vaughan, and Fiona Staples. I have been loving, but am woefully behind on books like Revival from Image, Matt Kint's Mind Management. I love. I've recently been reading and really enjoying Matt Fraction's Sex Criminals. That book is crazy and is not for everyone, but the folks for whom it is written, I think are really locking in and engaging with that book. I like that a lot. That might be it in terms of stuff I'm really actively excited about right now. There are other books that I read month in and month out, sort of routinely. I've been following Larry Hama's G.I. Joe stuff since they relaunched that just a few years ago, taking the original numbering from the Marvel comics and going on with that. I think that's an interesting saga and an important thing in the history of comics. I'm sure that I'll think of 100 things that I love and wish I had recommended to you guys as soon as I stop recording this. But those are the ones that come to mind immediately. If you guys are interested in having a segment talking about other books, certainly let me know. It is something we could do once a month or so, just as Joe suggested. But thanks, Joe, for writing in. It's a good suggestion, and if folks are into it, I think we should run with it. But if you want to write in, you can write an email to riverdale.podcast@yahoo.com. You can also write in from the Facebook page, facebook.com/RiverdalePodcast, or send a question on Twitter @RiverdalePod. I'm easy to get a hold of. If you want to help out the show, a great way to do that is to listen to the show every week. A great way to do that is to subscribe on iTunes, write a review. A great way is to tell your friends who are into Archie comics, or folks you want to get into Archie comics. Send them my way. Send them over to RiverdalePodcast.com. And a way to help out the show financially is to, again, head over to RiverdalePodcast.com and click that link for Things from Another World. That's tfaw.com, TFAW.com. That is a big, terrific online comic book shop. And right now, they are running their progressive sale. And they've got a whole batch of comic books and graphic novels and nick and dent items that are now between 60 and 80% off. They have been slowly dropping the price on those throughout the month, and now these prices are the lowest they're going to be. Some amazing stuff in there. Go in and get your Dark Horse Archie Archives for $20. Those are priced at $49.99, I believe. Crazy high prices. And Tifa knocks that price down to $20 for you. There's also some great IDW collections in there. Digests, single issues, lots of great stuff, and lots of great deals coming up this Monday for Cyber Monday over at Tifa.com. So if you want to help out the show, throw a few bucks our way, head over to Riverdale Podcast, click that link for Tifa.com, and then a percentage of whatever you spend at Tifa will be sent over to us. We'll pay some bills with it. We'll keep the show rolling, and you'll have some great books at some great prices, shipped straight to your house for you to read on these lovely winter nights we've got coming up. On the way out, I want to remind everyone to head over to RiverdalePodcast.com. There you're going to find links to all of the stories we talked about in the news portion of the show. You're going to see that great Jeff Schultz cover to Betty and Veronica Double Digest number 218. You're going to find links at RiverdalePodcast.com to send the show an email at RiverdalePodcast@yahoo.com. You'll find links to like the show on Facebook, follow the show on Twitter, head over to iTunes and subscribe, or write a review for the show. I do want to mention again that the address for the hospital where Stan and Pauline Goldberg are currently being treated is over at RiverdalePodcast.com. And please consider sending them a card or some flowers or a note or something, and cheer them up a bit in their recovery. Super excited to have you guys along for the ride. It's episode number 91. We're on that march to episode 100, a milestone that many podcasts don't get to. Maybe I'm speaking too soon, but I'm excited to get to that 100th episode, and I want to plan something great and exciting for you guys to hear that week. So thanks for sticking with me. Thanks so much for listening. Again, my name is Jonathan, and I'll see you again next week here in lovely Riverdale, USA.